sleep and cardiovascular function have, in fact, sleep has an influence in all physiological functions. And it comes perhaps as no surprise that it will have also an influence on cardiovascular function. Now, sleep apnea is it's a highly prevalent sleep disorder. You know that there are different estimates about the prevalence in the general population. That increases with age. Is also more common in men, and also has some factors associated with uh, body mass index or BMI. Now, during sleep apnea, what happens is that there are these repeated events during sleep where breathing is compromised. And by compromised, I mean there is either a complete obstruction of breathing, or there is a partial decrease in the amount of air that can flow into the lungs. And the consequence of that is a reduction in oxygen in the blood. And whenever that happens, also the concentration of carbon dioxide would increase in the blood. And those periods are called hypoxemic periods, meaning, there is a lower amount of oxygen that flows through the circulatory system. Now, what happens with that is that, we have in our body several chemoreceptors that, in fact, are responsible for keeping the homeostasis of the human body during wakefulness and also during sleep. And during sleep, when these chemoreceptors detect that the oxygen concentration decreases and that the carbon dioxide concentration increase, they will instruct, if you will, the heart to perform an extra effort such that more blood can be delivered to the body tissues in order to supply them with oxygen. And since that type of event, this compromised or occluded breathing during sleep is quite frequent in the pathology of sleep apnea, you can imagine that the chemoreceptors will instruct the heart to either increase its rhythm or to return to normal. And that imbalance, if you will, in the solicitation, if you will, of cardiac effort will produce in the long term a reduction of functionality of the cardiac muscle, which will ultimately lead to cardiovascular conditions. Now, the problem with that is that, this is a bidirectional, if you will, type of situation, in that while the presence of this sleep disorder, breathing, or apnea will cause a detrimental influence on cardiovascular function, this reduced cardiovascular function will in turn impact sleep disorder breathing. So basically, we are in the presence of a vicious circle that will, if nothing is done, could, of course, compromise the health and well-being of the person that suffers from sleep apnea. So, at the Sleep Number, we have smart beds that are able to unobtrusively monitor cardiorespiratory effort. The way that these smart beds operate is that there is a pressure sensor within the bladder of the mattress, and these sensors are so sensitive that are able to measure, to detect, if you will, tiny changes in movement of the body. And then the type of movement in the body that we can consider have different types of ranges in amplitudes, large movements, bed entry, bed exit, but also changes associated with the supply of blood or the heart beating, if you will. And those tiny changes give us information about cardiac activity. But also, because in the end, breathing has to do with physical movement, physical acceleration, if you will, of the chest, and then the muscles that are involved in respiration, those can be detected by the sensors that we have embedded in our bed. So, having said that, the interruption of breathing or the decrease in breathing effort associated with sleep apnea can be detected by the smart bed. And what is very advantageous is that we do not need to physically touch the body of the sleeper to measure breathing or to measure cardiac activity. So this can be unobtrusively. So I like to really emphasize this aspect because these sensors are able to characterize cardiorespiratory function during sleep without even touching the body. So it's this type of situation is sometimes referred in literature as ecologically valid, in the sense that this reflects real life conditions. So you sleep as you always do, in the comfort of your home and your bedroom. You don't need to go to the sleep lab, and already you can have an idea of whether or not respiratory function would be, so to speak, impaired during sleep. Now, at the Sleep 2024, we are presenting 4 studies. And these studies rely on a pretty unique, I would say, a feature of our system, in that we have more than 400,000 users that are interested in participating in a science panel, as we call it. So these are users that are volunteered to answer survey questions about their overall sleep quality and also the presence of sleep disorders. But in addition to the responses to the surveys, we have the data as captured by this pressure sensor that I explained before, which allow us, to combine responses to surveys and objective data that comes from our bed. And what is on top of that, great advantage of the technology that we have is that we can look retrospectively to several months and sometimes years of data, which allow us actually, to characterize the sleep and the sleep changes of a particular user, and then make a correlation with the answers to certain questions that we asked in the survey. So at the Sleep 2024, so we have a poster about the influence of regularity and the chronotype on sleep quality, where basically we are making the case that it's important to be regular in your sleep wake timing, and also to go to bed relatively early, which is associated with an earlier chronotype. We're also presenting a study where we show that snoring and sleep apnea are associated. So we know, and it's well known in literature, that 90% of the people that have sleep apnea will have snoring, and then between 20 to 60% of those that snore will have sleep apnea. But in the poster that we are presenting at the Sleep 2024, we are showing that if we add the insights from the objective data that we collect with our platform, we can have a high accuracy in screening people at risk of having sleep apnea, an accuracy that is characterized by 85% sensitivity and 85% specificity. We're also presenting another study where we looked at the influence of snoring on the sleep quality. And then what was very interesting is that we found that snoring, even for healthy people, can have some negative influence on sleep quality. And finally, we're also presenting an abstract about a poster about the monitoring of heart rate throughout a sleep session. And basically, we are looking at detecting something that is called heart rate dipping, which in short means that during sleep, it is expected that heart rate decreases by about 5 to 10 beats per minute compared to the heart rate during wakefulness. And if such a dipping doesn't occur, that, according to literature, is an indication that some cardiovascular function could be compromised. So, yeah, so I wanted to summarize for you the four posters that we will present at the Sleep 2024 that capture in a way, all the different aspects that we are able to look with the data that we collect.